Welcome to episode 14. This one we got Alex from Works. If you can't tell that car, that famous car in the back of it, and the t-shirt, that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll learn a little bit more about Alex's background, how he got into Porsche, Mezger stuff, and just generally nerd out like we normally do with talking about Mezgers. So let's kick things off. Let's find out a little bit more about your background. I know that this wasn't always your thing. You were a little bit of a software guy, right? Before that?
Sort of. Yeah, I wouldn't say software, but I mean, when I was at university in the I guess late 90s in London, England, that is, not Ontario. I was really just into video games and the computers that made them, look good and operate in a certain way, and I was into building my own, PCs, and because that's what you did when you were a broke student. And so I took a job, as a journalist writing about video games, and then I wanted to write about hardware, the same kind of stuff that you see now, NVIDIA, basically in the early days. So there were some companies like that. And I'd always been into cars as a kid, but in London, where you grow up, in the central London part, you're usually walking past parked cars because nobody's driving anywhere there, right? So you would see a lot of very cool cars, and I loved all the Matchbox toy cars, and I guess Hot Wheels over here. But it was never really, at that moment in time when I was a student, it was never really a thing. I mean, I grew up walking past 928s, and then later on, university in the mid 90s, 964s. So I always liked those cars, and sat in the back of my mother's friend's boyfriend that had a 930, that typical story, right? It was a cobalt blue one that never ran. Just, you could sit in it though. Probably never ran since. And so, yeah, being a journalist or wannabe journalist, I came over here to start a magazine, if you will, an online magazine in the 97. And it became pretty successful, I guess, in the days of, blogs. Well, prior to that, it was like a technology video game blog that became very popular. Also had the word shark in it. And, it sold for a nice, amount during the .com era. So I was an early .comer, pirate of Silicon Valley, whatever you want to call it. And my wife, who was a game developer and also entrepreneur, that helped me with that, started seeing that I was pouring in quite a bit of money into, cars, and namely, a 996 Turbo, which is the first Porsche I bought. And immediately I was like, I can overclock this, which is what we used to do on, PCs with, Intel CPUs and NVIDIA chipsets for graphics. And it had an AMD chip in it. It was very uncompromising the way we did it. I mean, it wasn't the type of car you could just put in a manual boost controller in. We tried that. It didn't work.
I mean, why not?
It didn't work very well. And it didn't work very well with uncompromised, tuning and basic tuning, but, blast it with timing and boost. But I immediately started, taking it to the drag strip of all things. This is, 2001. I had a non-compete, so I had time on my hands. And I kind of retired for a few years. And actually, one of the people that works for us, Dan, who's a good friend, I used to drag race with him and his friends in the Bakersfield scene, which is in Central California, and a very old drag racing scene. And, I'd show up in a 996 Turbo, which at the time you didn't see a ton of, certainly not in the, drag racing scene. And, you would have people, line up and run what you brung. And I just kept making the car quicker and quicker until I started blowing things up, which inevitably happens when you're that age and not so careful. And it led me to, my wife to sort of go, you might want to make a business out of this. You're having all these friends come over and people sort of want to do what you're doing with your car to theirs. And I started getting into a little bit more of the, track stuff in terms of, making the car turn as well as go straight. I met a person that was totally by chance, which was James. He's the engine builder. And he was working at a shop in the Bay Area that one of the friends or people that I'd met in the 996 turbo scene, um, told me to come to the shop and we would all work together on a couple of projects. And I set up what was then 996 turbo shootout for European Car and then for Excellence magazine. So we had, a bunch of really silly, 6 to 700 horsepower turbos back in 03, 04. And I kind of set that up. And, we all showed up from different parts of the country, different tuners, and competed in all sorts of, silly events. And, my car and my friend's car did pretty damn well. And after that, James, who is, the guy that builds those 4.1s, I noticed, he was, sort of looking to do something on his own and get away from air cooled and, more on the 996 turbo platform that I had. And so I said, hey, if you want to do this, I'm kind of free. I was courting a couple of technology companies, NVIDIA and Intel actually at the time. Probably that was the smart move financially, but oh well.
I mean,
but instead I decided to use the passion thing in my head instead of the sensible thing. And, partnered with him to help him do a shop basically and focus primarily on 996 turbos. And at the time, it just so happened that's a Mezger engine, and kind of a race engine too. From the famous GT1. And I'd been impressed by how far you could push that thing, not like, not much different to like, the Japanese Nissan GTRs and, those Mark IV super engines, those guys all had 800 horsepower. And I was like, well, you can do that kind of with a 996 turbo motor as well. So that's really how I got into it. It was, time on your hands after playing with technology. And then the 996 turbo appealed to me in terms of the technology at the time. I was like, wow, it's all-wheel drive. Oh, wow, it has PSM. I didn't really know what those meant. But, and wow, it's, got an amazing 0 to 60 and it has turbos and you can play with those. And all-wheel drive, which, I ended up not liking in the end. But at the time, I thought it was great.
I mean, it's not as intrusive as you think it would be when you manage all drive for those cars.
No.
So that's good.
But it was not a career path. I'm what they call a public school ponce or whatever from Westminster School in London. Most of my classmates, work in finance, politics, the city. And, when some of those folks found out, they're like, what are you doing? Yeah, that sounds really weird. So yeah, but that's part of, moving to the US. I got to do very different, interesting things. I was passionate about computers and video games. And also, as it turns out, I was passionate about, playing with big Lego, if you will, with cars.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a natural, like, like I'm into computers as well. So that makes sense. I feel like that's computers, watches, all those things, something that you can make it better and tinker with. Definitely
Yeah.
seems like it lends itself. What kind of power were you getting out of the 996 turbos before it started? Like getting where you needed to upgrade stuff?
Basically with a tune and diverter valves, you were at 500 and that made it go from a 12-second to a high 11-second car. And then I actually had the very first documented 10-second 996 turbo, whoopee for me. And, I got it up to about mid 600s at that point, and it was doing 10.6 at 137. And then I tried to push it more to get into the 9s. And that's where the heads lifted, the transmission broke, and it made it about half the way down the track. So we did like an 8th mile at 115 or something. And I was like, oh, cool, this is going to be a 9. And then it didn't go any faster than 115. Sat there.
I guess not.
GT. Yeah, there was a Carrera GT in the other lane and I beat it. I think it was like what was it again? It was like a 10.4 at 115 miles an hour because it just, like I said, the heads lifted and that was the end of it. So, well, that was the end of that particular iteration of the motor. After that, James, he was like, oh, it's just, it's the same as the engines he was building. Basically, he was taking apart all his dad's cars and stuff when he was a kid, putting them back together, and then bought some minis and Saabs and some Porsches, some old 911s, and to him, he was quite brave about it. I mean, it didn't faze him that it had twice as many parts, and it didn't matter to him. He's very self-taught and hands-on,
Yeah.
and that was a very lucky very lucky meeting, basically, and we hit it off. So yeah.
It's nice to have an engine builder, especially, I mean, in those cases of you just
well, and he's not
testing.
just an engine builder. I mean,
Yeah.
he's also, I mean, he's got a couple of degrees. He's Canadian, so his education is kind of similar to mine. And one is actually in business, as well as the other one in sort of science. But so he's got a good head on his shoulders for that, and he can do. I mean, I've never put something in front of him that he can't just figure out on his own. He's not the type of guy to read instructions unless he absolutely has to, but he'll probably only read them after he's done something. Just to check.
I have a similar mindset with that. It's like there are instructions, and if we come to this point, we'll figure it out. But,
we'll figure it out. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, so that car sort of early forum days, if you will. I would post about it on all the different Porsche forums, whether it was Renlist or what was the other one, 6 Speed Online.
Yeah.
And I also started to go on those, early group drives, if you will, early morning. There was less of the coffee and more of the driving, if you will.
The fun, the real fun, the fun part. Yeah.
It's developed into very important parking spots, and and a lot of that before you go drive it. Drive, yeah. So yeah, that's what we were doing. There was a good scene up here for fun roads. It's different to the Southern California scene. Those roads are generally faster and sort of, in some ways more dangerous, I'd say. But ours have a bit less traffic, and they're tighter, technical, more bouncy. Which is, well,
that's how North Carolina it is for the most part.
Yeah, you've got your tail of the dragon and stuff, right?
Well, that's the highlight.
Not everybody knows that one.
There's roads and stuff that we don't name for that reason.
Exactly. Those roads, the nameless ones are the best ones. I agree. Yeah. Same here. Yep.
For sure. So 996 turbo, that's cool.
Actually, I loved that whole platform. I mean, it was not super easy to work on and understand. It was quite challenging, but especially when you broke certain things. But it was amazing that you could really get about 700 horsepower from it without even building the engine, crank horsepower. So yeah. And I think that was the first engine where, I got a second one, a white one. And we built a 3.8 liter out of it. Bigger turbos, intercool, the whole 9 yards, everything we could throw at it. And it was pretty crazy quick for the era. But I think it got like 7 miles per gallon, and ran out of gas every 100 miles. And yeah.
Well, I mean, those turbos drink fuel anyway, so I mean, bigger and then bigger liter. Yeah, it's and more boost and everything. That makes sense.
I mean, at the time, I mean, I think it was like we were trying to, with both of those cars, we tried to make a Swiss Army knife, something that would work at the racetrack, something you could drag race in, something you could drive on the street. And I don't know that it did anything all that well, looking back. Yeah. It was kind of like maybe it was not particularly comfortable. It was very violent in terms of the power delivery, so, but, by pushing things to that level, we could sort of see, on our own cars where the limits were, and also to dial things back for, we started realizing, well, if we're going to do this for people, We don't really want these cars coming back. And we kind of only want
Yeah.
to see them once, if maybe twice, for a further upgrade, but we don't want to keep having them come in for things. So yeah, we would break everything on our own cars, and that continues to this day.
Then
We
dial
try
it
to break
back and
our
then
own
go,
cars so we don't have to
okay.
break anyone else's,
Yeah.
right? So
Exactly. Well, that, I mean, safety too. And I was thinking like the drag race stuff. You're like, well, drag racing, but that made sense back in that time because
yeah,
that's what everybody was
it was
focused on for the most part.
yeah,
Like,
it was a little bit like that. I mean, it was you know, overclocking PCs, overclocking, cars and turbos in particular. But once you've taken the car, on some fun roads or gone to the track, you start to kind of lose the care for, wow, I can push the gas for 9 seconds or 10 seconds, hopefully not lift the heads, and hopefully not do tens of $1,000s worth of damage in that process. You can
well, yeah.
you can it lasts longer than 10 seconds generally, right, on the racetrack or out on the canyon. So
Well, that's the thing too. You're spending the more money you're spending it to spend less time in the car. Like
yeah,
that's the
exactly.
goal. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's how you
yeah,
got to look at it. I mean, I mean, I can
yeah,
see where the track, and definitely,
yeah.
I like track stuff, but I mean, I think the mountain stuff, mountain roads is just sweet spot
Yeah,
for me. And like,
we've
like you said, cars and
we've
coffee
done
stuff was kind of
stuff
like,
we've done stuff for some, serious track people and some, stuff in that direction before, but that's very much a separate, um, I would say a separate business. Part of why we don't have the word racing in our name is because,
hmm,
we don't generally do that. We want to build cars, especially when we set out to do this. These were daily drivers, at least up here. This is before we
yeah,
started shipping things or building things for people in other countries or states. But, they had to work in, you know, traffic on the 101 or 880, in different conditions. And they had to be okay to drive or nice to drive even. And so, you know, and they had to be reliable. They couldn't be, well, don't worry about, this check engine light or that check engine light, or, yeah, don't worry about it stalling out, things like that. We couldn't have that. So when we were building our kits, or if you will, on our cars, we'd be driving them like that, like they were daily drivers. And that's how those cars were, especially when they were new. I mean, 20 years later, or, 15 years later or whatever, for these kinds of cars, yeah, people aren't daily driving them, but it's still nice that all the stuff we did back then to make them, feel factory-esque and, factory plus, if you will. Um, that that was a good way to go, I think, and it served us well for now because we can actually build, like the one back there with the European plate on it.
mm,
That's going to the Netherlands, so that's got our full 4.1 engine in it. We're just finishing the break-in up here on the coast. And that has to run and it has to work and it has to function so it doesn't come back. It's not like, the
yeah, that's a
Netherlands is
trip.
down the road from California. So, so yeah. So yeah, no, I'm glad we did it that way too. So yeah.
What's your break-in periods look like? What is that?
So typically it's about 600 miles and about 3 oil changes with different, different types of oil, and different style of driving, to ramp it up so that when the client gets it back, he can kind of go ahead and play with it again. Um, that's why we always prefer to have a car, and that's what we'll do for the big projects. But the engine build, like for something like that, it's not like when we first started where the cars are new. I mean, even cars that have, 7,000 miles on them, the bring a trailer specials that have never been tracked. Um, those cars
Never.
have, so many things that need to be, replaced. So it's a bit like a restoration project too. And then, you know, we'll add our motor, but we'll also do, you know, so many of the, I guess what you call the service bulletins that came out in that
Mm,
era or a few years later on a 3.8 or a 4.0 RS. We discovered that already by pushing it to 3.9 or 4.1. We were, we actually, and it's not just, the coolant pipe failures or the pipes themselves cracking or the cam adjuster failures or the butterfly failures or the freeze plugs flying out. There's definitely a lot of things. And then on top of it, when the cars are really start to age, you've got to go back and, replace some of these parts that were, you know, never intended to run for 15 years without any kind of service. I mean, not to scare people, but, I mean, they were built very much, I mean, they're very unique. They're the only car I know of that has an actual race car engine in it that shared the race car engine from the time, and transmission to a degree. And not, they've got some street car parts they put on, to make it, more emissions friendly. But, it's the only car like that, that has those race car parts. So, it's very stout, but at the same time, 15 years is 15 years. And,
Yep.
take care of things like that. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a Spitfire or a 4.0 RS, once they age, you've got to service them and do things with them. And
That's true. And I guess that's what people have to think of too when they're purchasing them. Like we kind of talked
yeah,
about before, just those things the things you know about, and then it's just things that you're not
yeah,
even thinking about, suspension stuff, like all going through all that, because whether
yeah,
it's got 6,000 miles, if those 6,000 miles of just sitting or a
yeah,
track day occasionally, but mostly sitting, it's just still wear on the car.
yeah.
Um,
And I mean, the torture testing, if you will, um, that was done when those cars were new, that, Porsche's pretty good at doing. Yeah, you could say, 24-hour races, that's one thing. But, some of the other auxiliary or external parts, they have issues, with time. I mean, it's a, it's an engine with oil and fluids and caustic fluids and idiot drivers sometimes, and sometimes, hand assembled things that, don't work for the duration, if you will. And whatever that duration is, they probably assumed, you know I don't know what they assumed, but probably 100,000 miles, they were assuming, that's good. But time is also the enemy. I mean, we still discover things, 15, 16 or 17 years later. For example, on those .2 RSs and .2 GT3s, they have a returnless system. So there's no fuel filter in the back, like on the point ones. And, there's arcing going on, in terms of on the fuel pump connectors. That's not very good, isn't it? So yeah,
no,
things like that. So, you're still going to discover, and there's still going to be more, service bulletin type discoveries, years and years later. But I mean, that's a, that's a different part of our business, the restoration side that, we got into by, focusing on these cars and staying with them, if you will. And, continuing to learn, right? So,
yep. Did you just love them so much that you continue to push them? Is that
yes.
why? I mean, because you're not. I
Yeah.
mean, I know other people work on Metzgers, but as far as like just my mind, it's just you guys are just that. That's
So, yeah,
what you do.
I mean, it sort of goes into the why Metzger, right? I mean, I told you, I got into the 996 turbo scene, Metzger, by chance, and you know about that. But, you know, not too long after that, maybe I think it was 2000, it was late 2006, one of our customers that we built a couple of cars for, Carreras, and he had a 930, but, he brought his 2007, which was, late 2006, 997.1 GT3. He's on Instagram, Snowboarder 54. He's
Oh,
like
I've seen him. Yeah,
yeah, he's our in-house torture tester. I mean, I think
nice.
he had like 95,000 miles on a 3.997 GT3, and then another almost 70 on a 4.1. So yeah,
That's impressive.
he's,
That's some miles.
yes. And it's all pretty much all canyon, crazy road miles, and he drives hard. So yeah, that's our torture tester on that platform. But he brought that car to us. Just it's like, Alex, you got to drive it. And I'm like, okay, it's got, 12 delivery miles. He had one of the first ones in California. I drove it around the block, and I mean, as soon as I actually touched any of the pedals, I mean, the clutch felt great, the
Yeah, nice and
brakes felt
heavy.
great. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
not
And
assisted.
progressing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was like completely different to a turbo where, you go back in a turbo and you push that pedal and your foot goes through the floor, right? Kind of like the 991s that are manual,
Mhm.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove it around, and just this, especially that accelerator pedal, the responsiveness, the character, it was like nothing I'd felt. At that point, I'd driven a Carrera GT, so
Mm.
that's in another zone, I guess. But that was in a 911, and it felt like, wow, this is totally like a race car. What's going on here? And stupidly, even before that, I had passed on buying a 996 GT3 because I got into it. It was there at the dealer, discounted, and the dealer called me to come. And I went with James. We drove it around the block. I was like, huh, it's kind of slow. It's not doing it for me. And then I turned to James. I was like, I don't know, but the engine feels kind of rough too. Like the cams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want it. Stupid. And I ended up buying that car 3 years later, and we built a 3.9 out of it. So there you go. That same car. Um, but the experience of just driving that 997.1 GT3 around the block after having high horsepower 996 turbos, it literally sent something through my body and spine, like the connection, the character of it. Like you felt like you were driving like a race car. And you know, from that moment on, I don't think I've felt any other car of any other brand do that. And it always feels like you're getting away with driving a cup car on the street. It's a very
Yeah. A
unique
little,
thing.
little less noise, but yeah.
Oh, that's noise. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but we can add more noise with, exhaust. We can add straighter cut gears. So we can turn it up a
Bring,
little and play
mhm.
with that, graphic equalizer, right? But yeah, I mean, you don't have that in any other brand that I know of. I mean, who else has released, an actual, street production car with the same race car engine? I don't know. Hasn't happened. And
No.
it'll never happen again. Not because of cost and emissions. It's kind of a
Yeah.
fluke. So
And again,
yeah.
let those prices keep going up thanks to that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what happens. People, you know, and this is not to knock the new stuff. I mean, the new stuff is technically brilliant. It's faster in terms of in the track environment. And it's just when you get to that 400, 500 horsepower level, when you're out in the canyons, I mean, who's having more fun? Someone driving a difficult to drive 997 GT3 or someone that's got a 992.2 GT3 or ST or something. I mean, it's debatable. I mean, for me, I'd be having more fun in the car that's making me sweat and smacking me if I make a mistake. And just, if my timing's off or I do something incorrect, there's weight transfer. Whereas in the other car, I mean, you can drive very quickly, relatively easily. Especially, and at a track, getting the 10 tenths, that's a different thing. But I mean, you can put most people in those cars and they'll produce us, pretty good lap time. Whereas you put those same drivers in a Mezger GT3, 996, 997, assuming they can, drive with 3 pedals and a stick, um, they're not going to produce a good lap time. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a very like
It might
muted
crash. It might
experience.
crash too.
Yeah. I mean, the newer cars are just more muted, and you wouldn't know that
Well,
unless you'd had the experience in these cars to
I,
know
I don't know if
how
I
that
mean
connection feels, and,
it's
and it's just softer. It's
yeah, and I don't want
fast.
to sound. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a grumpy old Porsche guy. Like when I got into it with 996 turbos, I'd show up to an event and there'd be, all the 993 guys. And they
Mm,
hated the 996 turbo, they're like, not just because of the lights, but it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's water cooled. It has PSM. It has this.
the
And
changes.
to a
Yeah,
degree, they're right. Yeah, the technology made it, more synthetic to them. And then as that goes on, now look at me. I'm like a 993 guy going, oh, PDK is this, and the 991 or 992 is that. And no, I mean, the technical achievements that they make with those cars, I mean, it's very impressive. It's just, I got hooked on a specific type of character and experience that, I've tried and I've had some of the newer cars. And I, I mean, spent multiple days in an ST, driving the same roads and whatever RS, you know, dot two, or 992 GT3, and they're spectacular if that's what you know, and what you're doing is buying the latest and greatest. But
Mm.
you cannot replicate the steering feel, the lack of driver assist, the difficulty, and the character of the engine, and putting it all together, with three pedals and shifting and steering, all of it. It's an experience that, it's like playing a difficult musical instrument versus just pushing kind of a button and, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, even some of the video games were like that, right? I mean, they were what we call, we always used to play, driving games, right? So I remember, Need for Speed, Porsche Unleashed, for
Yep.
example. That was quite arcadey, and it was quite easy to do well in, right? And so that would be maybe the 992 video game. And then you'd have things like, Gran Turismo that are pretty difficult, by
Yep.
comparison, and more realistic, maybe, but they weren't as, well, the graphics did get better over time, but you know what I mean? It was
Yep.
just more of a challenge and more rewarding that way, right?
For sure.
But
Yeah.
no, there's
Licensing and all
look,
that stuff.
Porsche.
So
The Porsche stuff is really weird, right? I mean, you can talk to, like, you could go to whatever, Airwater, right, in Southern California, like I did whatever a few weeks ago, and every single iteration is, well, no, these are the best. The 964 is the best. The 993 is the best. The 997 GT3 is the best. And no, the long hood's the best, and those cars suck or whatever. Um, so it was always that weird, club or whatever gets you hooked. But it just depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to go fast at the track, I mean, you probably don't want to take those. They're, you're going to bring a, Spitfire versus, an F-16, which is a 992. Right? So that's what's going to happen, you know? So if you want to go fast and, get good lap times, I mean, definitely the newer stuff is safer, um, quicker, easier to, extract, performance from. And it's definitely more accessible. I mean, I don't know, um, wow, how times have changed, but you could go into a Porsche dealer from 2007 to 2010, and there would be, GT3s or RSs that were not sold. They'd be sitting there. And I saw it with my own eyes because I used to spend a lot of time at the dealers back then. I'd go in there, I'd see someone looking over the car, next to a turbo or Carrera S or whatever, and they'd get in it and they'd kind of hum and haw about the looks of the wing or the silly stickers. And they'd sit in the car and they'd push that clutch pedal and they'd be like, hell no, you know, no, not doing it. Right. Yeah, no, too stiff, too this. And even then, if they did go for a drive, they'd come back and they'd just be like, no, it's just not for me, you know? And now, you go into a dealer and, okay, you can't buy them, but if there was a used one there and someone test drove a 992 or 992.2, I mean, it's easy to drive, it's much easier to drive. And also the PDK opens the I guess the ability for just, more people to drive it. Right. I mean, it was like you were, if you were Porsche and you were, trying to sell 997 GT3 RSs in 2010, um, you know, you were appealing to a very small segment of the market, that could, could drive it, or B, would want to drive it. And it's actually kind of cool because so many years later, I feel like, there are more people now that would want to drive one of those and own one of those than then, which I think is kind of cool. I think that's, it means that the the passion for driving and that kind of experiencing that roller coaster ride or whatever you want to call it, of that race engine. I mean, it's still there and it's burning strong, or stronger, I would say.
mm,
People that are younger, which is great. I mean,
that yeah.
we're not all old grumpy, Mexico owners. I mean, it's one of my pet projects is, someone that's done well at whatever, Nvidia, Facebook, or Apple, or wherever, you know, they might have gotten into it with their 991 GT3 or whatever. And, you know, they hang with us for a while and they sample what a Mezger does. And then they go back and get a Mezger, you know, and they go, wow, this is something different, you know, and for, you know, having fun on the canyon roads, coastal roads, whatever. I mean, it's quite an experience by comparison, I think. So,
So,
right.
what made you? I've just been thinking, what made you get the 996 GT3, the one you passed, but then got
Oh, that
later? Would
one?
you?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, by then, so, you know, to finish that story of the first 997 GT3 I'd gotten, you know, as soon as I came back, we ordered a green, you know, GT3 RS, right? So that, yeah, and that
Nice.
became the 3.9, and that was like our first real media storm in a different level. Um, and once we, you know, once we got that, I was like, oh man, we should go revisit the 996 GT3. And that's why we did that. At the
Nice.
time, I think they were like, I don't know, 50 or 60 grand. That was
Yeah.
crazy. It was crazy. They still needed a coolant fix, a lightweight flywheel, you know, all the LSD, you know, they still needed all that stuff. But, yeah, we built a cool 3.9 out of that project. And we can't keep them all. So we sold it to one of James's friends in Canada.
Nice.
And he still has it to this day. And, you know, he's made some fun videos with it. It's a white one with, you know, we put blue wheels, kind of like the RS, you know, that we didn't get in America. But yeah, you know, lightweight flywheel, 3.9, 997 style exhaust. So it sounds
Nice.
a little beefier and cooler, you know, like we like. Um, yeah. The 996 GT3s are also another weird one, right? They're sort of, well, very low production, and misunderstood. I mean, even I misunderstood it. I didn't get it at all when I first drove it. But, I don't know. The prices have definitely gone up, but I guess people can't get over the lights or whatever, right? So,
Well, I mean, that's the one that I almost bought initially before I bought my Dot 2,
hmm
997, because
yeah,
I was looking at a 996 in Tennessee,
yeah,
and it was nice, Euro buckets. It was
yeah,
cool, and then I got a text, and that was
yeah.
it. That was the
It's,
end of that. I was like, "Hey, do you want this?" I'm like, "Well," and money worked, and so
Yeah, they were the bargain of the century right before COVID, or generally around COVID.
mhm.
I probably should have bought a whole bunch of them and I didn't. Like I regret that. But and someday I think we want to do a full one-on-one, but it has to be our own car because, you know, we built some 3.9s of those. And they're pretty potent in that platform, and, you know, tires are better now than they used to be.
A lot better.
But,
Yeah,
you know, they're
that's true
skinny
too.
and yeah, exactly. So they're skinny, you know, 295s in the back. Um, but yeah, I really dig those cars. I mean, they're the size, they feel almost to drive, they almost feel 964 RS-ish in a way,
Mm.
just with a more, um, you know, more, impressive and characterful motor. I mean, I like 964 motors. They're awesome to drive, especially, you know, ones we built. And,
Yeah,
it's just that they don't have that same, you know, race car engine in them, right? That we love.
yeah. They don't have
And not,
all the parts put together. I mean, still a
no,
964 block, so that's.
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
kin. It's kin. It's
yes,
close.
yeah.
Um,
But the size and feel is very, and era. It feels like it's connected to that car. Like a 996 GT3 almost feels more connected to that car than it does to a 997 GT3. I think the 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 way the way things progressed from the 996 to the 997 was leaps and bounds. And then even between a point one and a point two, there's quite a big difference that people, you know, never understood at the time, journalists certainly. Um, and I think you know, if you're weird like some of us, that we've had multiple of all of those cars, you know, you really start to notice the nuances and the, you know, pretty striking differences between, you know, driving one versus the other. Um, and, you know, I think that's, I think there's going to be, you know, less and less of those 996 GT3s to buy because they were tracked heavily. The ones that did
Mm.
exist, some of them got, you know, munched. Some of them got modded in terrible ways. And then, you know, the really good ones people held on to, and they're not going to sell them because they just, if you drive them, you know how special they are too. I mean, they're a bit more, you know, obviously a bit more analog than the 997 even. Um, you know, like that's why the license plate on ours had no PSM. That's-
Yeah, I mean
that's-
that's what I hear. Everybody says that the 996. I haven't got the chance to drive 996 GT3 yet. There
yeah.
are tons of other things, but not that. And from what I've heard, it's a different experience from the other cars, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of
Well,
makes
you've
sense.
had you said your dad has a 996 turbo, right?
Yep.
So it's, if you think of it in that package, but kind of with most of what you have in a point 0.1 GT3 engine, not most, but
Hmm.
you know, I mean, a good chunk of it. It it does feel, it does feel smaller, feels simpler. Um, it's even the yeah, even the delivery is different in that car. I mean, it's not as spectacular as in a point 0.1 or point 0.2 GT3. You know, it doesn't have, I mean, they didn't have the parts back then. They just threw Carrera parts at it for exhaust and stuff, right? And it doesn't have the Vario cam on the intake and exhaust like on a .2 GT3. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't have some of that, and the noise isn't quite there because of the 996 GT3 exhaust, but it's still a spectacular car, and it's a great platform to mess with. I mean, you know, on those cars, you could, you know, you, once you've done the coolant fix, if you do a you know, flywheel from a 4.0, it revs even better than the 996 GT3 RS at the time because those flywheels were hit, were, you know. So you can do things like that. You can add a bigger, you know, plenum and throttle body from a 997 GT3. You know, you can re-gear them. You know, they don't need a lot of stuff on the suspension side, actually. For a static, you know, you know, semi-active suspension, they're one of the best handling cars, I think, to drive, with a good alignment. They still need they have that problem with the toe angle changes. There's a eccentric bolt in all 996, 997s, and Caymans as well, that turns mid corner and the toe angle changes on this lower link. Yeah,
Yeah.
that, yes, just geeky stuff. But you fix all
Hmm.
those little things and put, you know, an even, you know, beefier LSD in there, and wow, it just feels great. Feels
I was going to
really,
ask you, like, what's your kind of go-to recipe outside of building the motor? Like lightweight flywheel, that's a must
yeah,
type thing.
yeah,
Like,
lightweight flywheel, like any GT3 motor, you know, Mezger motor, that does not have a lightweight flywheel, you're sort of, it's like you're riding a bicycle with training wheels, because, or you're dragging something, right? That's what
mm,
it feels like to me. And as impressive as they feel, you know, stock, um, you know, they have to have a lightweight flywheel in them to experience what that motor can do and how it reacts. It's just, it's so much more fun, you know, revving up and down that way. And you know, other than the noise that it makes at idle, you know, like a Ducati where it chatters,
it does
some
chatter,
people,
and
yeah, it does
it
chatter.
is
Yeah, some
louder than
people
the
call it,
RS by a good bit.
yeah,
And
yeah,
my friend of mine, we both have .2s. He had an RS, and I have the GT3, so we swapped
yeah,
just to test it out. And I have a lightweight flywheel and 4.0 clutch.
yeah.
And he's like, "Man, this feels really quick." I was like, "Well, that's the difference
That's,
there." And
yeah.
then
Well, the
it's
acceleration
just
is,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Especially in the lower gears, the acceleration. Like if you look at the press figures or whatever the numbers they posted for, you know, 0 to 60, like we care, you know, back in the, you know, whatever mid 2000s and late and early 2000s. Um, you know, the difference between the RS and the GT3, especially like in the point 0.1, there was no difference other than the flywheel, really, right? As far as performance. And so the performance is, you know, the flywheel. And that's a big, you know, part of the acceleration, but the experience too is something to have. Yeah. So anyone without one, I'm like, I just kind of, I urge them to change it. It's just, you're going to
I
have
would
a
as
much,
well. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
didn't, cause I hadn't, as soon as I got mine, I think I'd gone through that because I was doing coolant lines and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, I'm already, motor's out, clutch can be
Yes.
done. It's probably time. And so I did that. That's all I ever really knew until I drove his RS. And I was like, yeah, yours chatters. Like I hear that,
Yeah.
but it's like, it's not it's not near as loud as mine. Um,
No.
and then it does, if you are in the wrong gear, it does not like it. So
Oh, the sizzle. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
mean, that's just telling you to shift. It's just telling you
yeah,
to shift and keep the RPMs up.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the the point being that, okay, a lightweight flywheel doesn't necessarily, I mean, it doesn't do wonders on a turbo platform for me, like
mm,
I did it on my turbos. I did it on the GT2 we had, and GT2 RS has it. And the performance benefit is considerably less. There's easier ways to get performance, and it just doesn't feel as special on a engine that is, I guess, dragging more with heavier components or forced induction, right? So yeah, I don't like to do that on turbo cars. I think there's better modifications for those types of cars. But any naturally aspirated, I mean, even if it's M96 came or 97 or 87, came in 996, lightweight flywheel's fun. I mean, we do a lot of those parts on, that's sort of our, you know, uh, dish of the day for most cars that are NA, right? You just throw
yeah,
that at it, and you're going to have more fun driving. You're going to rev up and down quicker. You're going to, have more fun, shifting down, up, whatever. It's just better acceleration. So yeah, yeah. I mean, if you haven't yet, you know, done a flywheel on a Mezger GT3, definitely go feel someone else's car, because yeah, and the factory provides a really amazing, you know, factory setup. You don't have to buy an aftermarket one. The 4.0 one is the business. I mean, it'll hold even the power for our engine. So, it's,
nice.
the same in the GT2 RS. So I, I don't, I mean, sometimes a factory makes, parts that are, you know, so far beyond what any aftermarket company could make in terms of their, durability and feel. Like the feel of actually driving that clutch is, it's so progressive. It's so nice. It's like you could totally daily drive that car. It's not like one of those, I don't know if you've ever driven like a badly modified Mark IV Supra or something with, you know, the multi-disc plates
Yeah.
and a flywheel where it just stalls if you touch anything. Yeah, it doesn't do that. So
I drove a
yeah,
stage 3 clutch out of a 996 turbo, and it was just the worst.
that is
It was
terrible. I
like
know.
it had travel like about, yeah, about
Mhm.
maybe an inch and a half, and for me it was
Yes.
just
Yeah. And it's
it was
like
a
a
friend of
switch. It's
mine's.
like a switch, right? You just,
Yeah,
or a button. It's a button.
yeah,
It's not a clutch. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
Yeah, those are terrible. Yeah, those are, and those are hydraulically assisted, and quite often, those are they have failures in the accumulators and slaves. So, yeah, what you're feeling isn't even very consistent, and what you're feeling is nothing, actually. It's just very dead. It's disconnected. So yeah, the 996, 997 turbos have those systems. Not the best. Not the best. I agree.
yeah. That's what I was trying to tell. I was telling my dad about it. I was like, "You got to change this. I can't, because I had moved it or something, and I always forget that they're assisted until I'm in this car, and I'm like, this has no feel, and I don't know how you drive it."
Yeah, you have to do that one foot style, right? Where
Yeah,
you're kind of like on a Courier GT, where you just don't touch the gas pedal at all, and until it's moving backwards or forwards in first or reverse, and then once it's moving, then you can start doing stuff with the gas. But
yeah,
yeah, you just have to be really, yeah, and aware. I've driven some of those. We built some, 700-800 horsepower turbos back in the day. Sort of 2007, 2008, and I remember delivering them to some customers in San Francisco, going up and down
yeah,
those hills to Visadera, where you're like, and with that
yeah.
style of
That would have
clutch,
to be terrible.
I was just like, oh boy, yeah, yeah. And, got a tram behind me, and people cutting in and out, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm stuck on a, very, very steep hill in this 800 horsepower turbo with no clutch feel. Yeah. Yeah. We don't like those kinds of clutches.
Man,
Yeah.
yeah, San Francisco. I had a little stint in San Francisco for flew in there for rent sport, and I drive the guy I did the Turo car from had a 997, and I drove that out there, and it was as soon as I was just happy to get out of San Francisco, I was like, yes, thank you.
Yeah. 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 Some of those streets are pretty amazing for those kinds of clutches. That's for sure. Yeah. Which Rensport was that?
The last one, and I was in there for 2018 as well.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. I remember that one. I remember that one. Yep. Yep.
I try to get out to California when I can.
No. Well, hopefully you got to do some roads going up and
Oh
down.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Big. I went out. I was everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Good. Good.
yeah, we
Yeah.
had
No.
some setups, some drives with some air cooleds and some other stuff out there. So we had some friends.
Yeah. No. Well, and I know you were sort of asking about, Metzgers and stuff, but we've tried to, we not tried to, but with the newer cars, as they become more and more, technically difficult to modify or work on, or even, the factories kind of modified them to a point where, what can you do to them other than make them sound a little better, right? Or take out some of the semi-solid bushings and put stiffer ones in if people are
Mm,
tracking, right? But um, I mean, they've pushed those cars to a point where, yeah, they're incredibly hard to work on and extract anything out, and like the inputs that we make don't necessarily, give you the outputs that the older cars could, right? They were simpler, and so now they're dependent on a lot more factors and computers and models, that things that, we couldn't really fathom. And so, whilst we still do, you know, modifications for those, they're just much sort of, they're, they're simpler in that, um, and simpler in scope in terms of what we, want to achieve with them. I mean, just make them sound a little better, basically.
yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say exhaust
And
is probably check the box,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Because they're, they can sound better. They could sound better from the factory. But I mean,
always.
we've pivoted before, and at different times. I mean, one of the one of the ones we about 10 years ago that we tried to sort of focus on was the GT4 platform. The one we got, it felt very much like they made that car for the people that were like, oh, they're not doing manual GT cars anymore. And so here's, a mid-engine one that feels size-wise kind of like a 997. And the front,
Mm,
the way they did the geometry and the suspension setup and everything, it felt very much like a 997 GT3 to drive, in terms of the
yeah,
feel, size. And so, but the product itself, as with Porsche, when they first do a quote unquote GT of any kind, it isn't, they don't throw the kitchen sink at it. And so immediately we were like, well, they didn't make a GT4 RS, so we could kind of do a spin on that. How do we do that? Well, lightweight flywheel, better gearing, better, slightly better aero, and, a little more power and response. And so that's what we did. And we got, a really good response to that, for the newer cars, if you will. And so we built a lot of those, similar to our car. And, again, and we seem to attract these types of people. There's he's no longer with us, but Phil, Croc GT4, he sadly passed away recently, but, we built one for him. I believe it was 2017. And, up until this year, he had 175,000 miles on that, so he was another one of these torture testers
nice.
for us. I mean, we tested it on our car, but, we got lucky having someone like that. I mean, he was almost like a evangelist. He ended up having like the most famous GT4 in the world. Porsche, kind of gave him some recognition multiple times, on their official social media, and they
That's
knew him
cool.
all the way up to, Andreas Perniger, And, you know, that's the kind of caliber person we're very lucky to have, you know, attracted to build the cars for. And, you know, I think that there's still some interesting stuff left untapped, you know, in the last 10 years as far as those cars. But yeah, I mean, the Metzger will always be our, you know, right.
Right.
That
Right.
will always be our love. I mean, um, the car was really great to drive, spectacular, but it just still didn't have, you know, that race car motor, that DNA, that character. You know, it felt very much more like a very impressive street engine that
Mhm.
was, you know, a sewing machine, impressive, you know, precise, um, but not, you know, gnarly and nasty and, you know, kind of, you know, hand built. It just, a lot of the cars now feel, you know, very digitized, you know, and then that's impressive. But, you know, I like the fact that, you know, a Metzger GT3 engine pretty much has twice as many parts as a, you know, 991 engine. I mean, that's not good for economies of scale or for Porsche. You know, that's why they don't want to continue to make that other engine. But um, you know, and it's probably why so few people work on them or do stuff with them. Because they are pretty difficult to work on and get right.
Yeah.
But you know, you know, it's not that we, yeah, I was gonna say it's not that we haven't pivoted at times or haven't tried to, but at the end of the day, you know, um, when you're, well, the complexity is off the charts on the new cars. I mean, the dot two GT3 or the ST or the, you know, 92.1 GT3 RS. I mean, there's so much going on there. Like I don't even, yeah, I mean, hands up. I mean, we don't know why they do the things they do, or half the time why they're working the way they work. I mean, yeah, it's far beyond any human, you know, any human knowledge. I would say there's
Yeah.
so much going on with those cars. Um, you know, but you know, the power delivery is what it's all about, and the experience of it, right? So, you know, there's going to be people that only know that and only love that because that's where they started from, or maybe they started at a 991. Like if you started
Mhm.
at a 991 GT3 and then you bought a 991.2, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is, you know, this is incrementally better. And then you go to a 992 and you're like, oh wow, you know, this is way faster. I'm getting, you know, I'm going 4 seconds faster around Thunder Hill or whatever, or
Yeah.
Laguna. And, you know, it's going to be a fact and that's going to be enticing. But when you've got all those cars out in a group, I mean, I think everyone can have fun in the old ones or new ones, but, you know, it just so happens that, you know, like I said, like a fish hook, it's in us on those Metzgers. The
Exactly.
delivery is something else. So, yeah, and I think the difference with those cars than how I remember it being from 993s and air cooled, it seemed like definitely, you know, the elitism of the old cars are better. And it was an older group, but it does seem like a lot of the younger people really do enjoy or appreciate what those cars could do. I mean, maybe they had posters of them or, you know, watched. I remember one of my friends and customers always used to talk about a episode of Top Gear where the original Top Gear, or somewhat original, I think it was in '06 or '07. They took the green RS. They took
Yep.
one of those Lamborghini Gallardo shit
Mhm.
boxes
Yep.
and an Aston Martin race car across Europe.
Mhm.
And, you know, the green RS was what everyone remembers, right? And so I
Exactly.
remember having the car at the same time and thinking like, wow, this is great.
That's
You
cool.
know, how come we didn't get a roll bar and plastic window? Yeah.
Yeah,
But other than
exactly.
that,
Why did we get any cup car stuff? Yeah, or yeah,
yeah,
the CS. Yeah, that's
yes.
season 10, episode 1 for anybody that wants to
Yeah.
play that game at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
That
good
was, I
episode.
think that was peak Top Gear too for me.
Oh
That
yeah.
was like, yeah, it was,
I
yeah.
mean, James May's choice was clearly the wrong thing
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
in that
exactly,
episode for sure.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was, you know, so I'm happy that, you know, those cars think they're just gonna always be on a pedestal for so many reasons. But the main one is if you're a driver and passionate about, you know, uh, the feel of it and the responsiveness of it, you put your feet on those three pedals and your hands on that steering wheel and gearbox, the shifter. And I mean, the feedback you get, whether it's the engine, the suspension, the, the handling side of it, it's just, it's definitely going back in time to where things were possible in that way. And, you know, again, maybe somebody could Google this, but I don't know of any other car manufacturer releasing, like a production car with a race car engine like that. So
No, I mean, yeah, I can't
and
either.
that
That's the
engine,
thing. And
as you
I'm,
know, that engine actually, and I used to tell people this, when they had 991.1s or even point twos, the Cup cars ran that same Metzger engine up
yeah,
until 2018.
I didn't, yeah, I didn't know that till I talked to another race shop friend of
Yeah.
mine here
Yeah.
in Florida,
Yeah,
and he's like,
we
"Yep."
we we
He's like, "Those
sell our
crazy." Yeah,
coolant pipes to the guys that still run those cars, so
that's
because
cool.
they need them. They need to replace those plastic ones. I mean, the whole Metzger thing is kind of a fluke. I mean, it's a fluke that I got into it, but it's a fluke that the 996 Turbo even had a Metzger engine. I mean, they did not
Yeah.
want to continue to use that. They wanted to use what the M96 block, and they tried to turbocharge it, and it blew up. It didn't work. So they had to,
Oh,
add water cooled heads, which they'd done previously, but,
yeah,
continue on from the 993 turbo. So, the Metzger engine is kind of not a fluke, but a miracle and fluke. And, we're very, I feel very lucky and fortunate that we sort of stepped on it and stepped in it. And, together with, Andreas Perniger, who basically in the early 2000s took over and did the GT program. I mean, I guess the 996 GT3 RS was his first car, but uh, I think, you know, we're whatever version of the GT you'd like. I mean, he's a very unique, leader of that whole program
mm,
that no other manufacturer has. And I mean, I definitely, I mean, I'm very grateful to him, personally and, from a business level, but just, from a passionate level, I think, he's done incredible things. I know he'll take some stick for, whatever the convertible one that triggers
yeah,
ever
the SC thing. Yeah,
see, but I mean, he's, but it's, they're going to sell a shit ton of them, right? That's what they're
oh, for
supposed to
sure.
do.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you looked at it, they kind of have a model for it because if you have the spiders are doing well in sales,
Mhm.
and then you have
Yep.
the RSs that the spiders are doing well, so
Yep.
there's a case for it,
Yep.
and it's just something they've never built.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I didn't think about till now is just like how much of an enthusiast he is for the
Oh,
cars.
yeah.
And then they go and him his thing to go back and drive the old cars and then figure out this is what like and continue to put
Yeah.
that in there in the program. I think it's
Mm.
the only thing that's made this be
Yeah.
different and survive.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing unless it was for someone like him, having established the, the craziness for these cars. I mean, I'm really lucky along the way, to have, you know, uh, the people that, like James and Dan and Joan that, all own Sharkworks and have been there kind of since the beginning. But, I guess the food on the table that we get to play with or whatever, or get to cook is, from AP at the top. Right. So, um, yeah, I mean, I'm just really glad I didn't like Ferrari or Lamborghini or
I
Nissan.
mean,
Oh, wait,
I'm
had
sure
other
there's an Alex somewhere that's doing those things, but
probably.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just not
Yeah.
not as
No.
fun. I did have a question. So I know you have 3.9s and 4.1s. Has there ever been bigger motors?
Yeah.
Did you
We've,
like 4.2s or
well,
is there a
so
reason you would
technically
like,
well, it
yeah,
depends how you look at it. I mean, if you
okay,
do the math, it's 415. So we
okay,
round it down. You could round it up if you want. Yeah, we've tried different size bores and things like that to make it larger. But one of the things that you get when you do that is, more weight and loss of character in terms of the responsiveness, right? So I think for me, a perfect, delivery is in that 415. You've got like a massive amount of torque that you don't have and not that you're used to, and then you can still rev out like it's a GT3. When you start to go to 4.3, 4, 4.4, that level, it feels sort of heavy and like you're dragging something,
Mm.
and you're maybe making more torque, but you're not able to rev out. And part of that was, I think one of the best revving ones is the 3.9 that we built. That feels like an extension of the factory 3.6, but with a lighter weight flywheel than even the flywheel that
Oh,
you
nice.
put in there. And it builds and builds, and you play with the cams and stuff too. You can really, get a useful wide power band that's fun to play in, right? And so uh, in my drag racing days, I'd be like, yeah, bigger, bigger, always bigger, of course. But even then, you'd start to be like, well, cool, my turbo spool's at 4,000 RPMs and then it redlines at 65. Well, that's exciting. And it's very on and off. Whereas, I think what we've done with those cars is, I mean, really from 25 to 5, the a red like well, that car there, which you can't see, is a regular 3.8 GT3. That one doesn't feel like anything amazing. You don't really want to live there, but in those other cars, I mean, you can live there and you can go all the way to 85, 86, and you've got like this wide power band to play in. Whereas on a stock one, you're basically going from, I'd say, 5 to 84 or whatever, right? That's where you live. But yeah, when you have that torque down low and the delivery of it, and then you keep, you cam it right so you can keep pulling, then yeah, I think that's kind of the level we feel is an extension of the character, and B, still reliable. I mean, it took a lot of, tear downs and figuring out to even get it to work properly at that level. I mean, 3.8 RSs and 4.0 RSs in particular, they're not um, known to be flawless in terms of the problems they have, especially at the 4.0 level. They uncovered some specific problems, that we saw as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, as well as building it out, you got to kind of look at the things you're doing and improve on the areas behind it, or to get you there. So yeah, I haven't liked anything, once you get past, 104, 105, like that style, that big of a piston, it just doesn't feel right in a GT3. I don't know if you've played with NSXs, for example, but the early ones, people used to put superchargers on them, and it felt they were quicker, yeah, but they lost the character and how they revved, so it felt like you were dragging. So yeah, there's the whole thing of power, but power delivery and character, and I think we're trying to play with the graphic equalizers and the power delivery and character and keep it, exciting to drive. Like, I mean, if you've driven a Carrera GT, for example, um, you know, could that have been bigger displacement? Maybe for a few hours it could have, but yeah, but
Yeah,
it wouldn't.
as to what limit? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that makes sense.
So, I mean, we were sensitive to that. I mean, in our development for the 4.1 and even 3.9, I mean, we started with 3.8, and we never released it. We had people wanting to, um, you know, build a 3.8 because that's what we were supposed to get with the RS originally. We were supposed to get a
Mhm.
3.8 and we didn't. And the green car showed up as a 3.6. And I was like, hey, James, can we just build a 3.8? He's like, yeah, it's easier than building the turbo motors. Why not? So that's what he
Yeah,
did.
that's true.
And it felt good. It felt good. I mean, it felt like, probably felt similar to what you have,
Mhm.
3.8. And it just, when we were done with it, we were like, okay, well, we'll put some miles on it, test it out. And I think it got tested by Excellence.
Nice.
against the 997 GT2 when that was
Oh,
released. I remember that was on the cover, and we were like, yeah, we can do better than this. We could make it, rev snappier with lighter weight parts, and
mm,
also push it out further. And we did to 3.9, so we bored it even more, and then we set up some specific cam profiles and other things to make it really pretty spectacular. And I think it was 2 years later that car went on the same cover from being like a tiny little green dot next to the big red 997 GT2. It went in reverse where it was on the cover against the then released 3.8 GT3, which,
nice.
yeah, I think it was like Hello 8800 RPM. It's kind of a cool cover. Um,
That's cool.
so yeah. I mean, I think you know, you have to be you have to own the car, I think, and you have to really drive it to and try those things, and kind of, someone has to make the call. Well, I've lost some of the character, I've lost some of how it revs. It doesn't feel as playful, versus, well, we could eke out another 10 or 15, foot-pounds. So there's there's part there's somebody there that has to, and that's where we come in, I think. That we try to do
That's
that.
really cool. I mean, and the cooler part about all that is that you're going out and putting it on canyon roads and doing that and going, this is
Yeah.
what I like, this is what I don't like, not just going, oh, the customer says they want a bigger liter motor. Let's just
Yeah.
build. That 3.9
No.
seems like a good idea, you know? Like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a
No.
lot of those out there.
Yep. Yeah, we did. I think we in the end did. So we started doing those 3.9s from 2009 till we did it for 11 years. I think we did 30 of those. It was 30, including the 996s. And we stopped in 2020 because, um, well, we did, that was like the first COVID build we did, I guess. And that was the last 3.9. So we had to change suppliers for some of the parts because
Mm,
they were in Europe and things shut down. And things got so expensive and also overlapped so much with the 4.1 that
yeah.
most of the parts and most of the process was similar minus a crank, that we
Yep.
decided we will just do, 4.1s. And so that's what we've been doing. I mean, we've had some requests to do 3.9s again, and we might, it just depends. But,
It's got to be
you know,
easier than finding 4 liter cranks, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah, that
those aren't
too.
easy to come by.
No, but no, they're not. And then on top of it, when we were doing those 3.9s, the cars were brand new or a couple of years old, right? So, you know, they needed less stuff changed. And you're taking a car that has, 5,000 miles or 8,000 miles versus now they've got 80,000 or something, to do a 3.9. I mean, you have to tear everything apart and replace almost everything. So yeah, I think, and also the tire technology was worse back then. So we never really wanted to do the 4.1s on the .1 cars. They have, smaller tire, well, non-RS. And they also have, that very strange, I don't even know if I call it traction control. I don't know what it is. It's kind of evil. Yeah, it's very strange. We didn't want to kill people, right? So,
Yeah.
and I mean, it was, but now you've got a Pilot Sport Cup 2, which is so far superior to a Cup 1 at the time. And we're also, I mean, especially in the last few years, we've really gone further in the chassis side of things where, we're not, because driving on canyon roads is so, the performance window is so wide in terms of what you're
Mm,
trying to do with suspension. Like you have to be able to, um, set up the car to work well from 30 to 80, let's say, right? Miles an hour, but it has to work well at those low speeds. It can't just get all unhinged on bouncy, and bouncy and
yeah.
pogo everywhere at low speed. So it has to have a good high, low speed. It can't be, stiff in all those areas, right? So obviously, yes, it can be stiffer when you're going faster, but at lower speed, you want to keep the control and keep the flow going. So, yeah, I mean, on the chassis side, we've been using that tractive suspension, for example, things that we've added since we started as just engine builders. And I think even, I talked to Rod Emery, and he's using the same suspension setup even on a
Nice.
356. So on those builds. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff that's happened, that's, technology driven, such as, the active suspension from Tractive,
Yep.
um, that's all come about, and Porsche uses that in the new cars, well, not Tractive, but they use that type of technology.
Yeah, the same
Um,
technology.
and
Yeah.
it's gotten better. I mean, the point two PASM, your car is
Mhm.
so far superior to the point one, which was only 3 years old. And it's just gotten better and better in terms of the capability. And then it's just, you know, partnering with good people and suppliers to, and driving it on your own car and in your own situations, and, and dialing it in. And then
Yeah.
it's the
My
engine.
Pasm doesn't know what's going on. It's got JS and JZRS Pro 3s on there now, so
Oh, you
there's
JRZs,
no
those
yeah,
guys? Oh yeah, the
yeah,
3 ways. Yeah. So
yeah.
that's what I call, static suspension. And it's not that you can't get something good out of those, but I used to be very much in that camp, and I hated all the semi-active or active suspension.
Mhm.
I didn't like it. I just wanted to get rid of PASM. But quite often with those styles of suspension that you've got, like whether it's JRZ, MCS, Moton, Olens, or Oleans, whatever,
Yep.
um, they they're set up very well for places like the ring, the Nürburgring, where you're
Yeah, for
going
like
really,
one
really
thing.
quick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then on the canyons where you're going 30 to 70 or whatever, you know, um, the stiff spring is taking the duty cycle off the shock, and it's just bouncing around like crazy. And so the performance window, or the window itself where you're setting up the car, is quite narrow, and the capability isn't as wide unless you get out of the car, turn some knobs, or
Yeah,
remove
just
the
clicks.
coilover and
Yeah.
put a different spring in, things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I've used all those. I had all that kind of stuff in my 996 turbos as well back in the day, and I've used them on these cars. But yeah, like you said, I like the roads we have here, and they're very. I think they're some of the best in the world, actually. They're very diverse for the types of, you've got undulations, hills, climbs, tight turns, wide turns. I mean, you've got mountains, you've got coastline, it's all pretty as well. You've got redwoods, you can bounce the exhaust noises off. But the chassis is something that, you know, you, you can really, um, you can really play with, to, in the playground I'm in. And then we deliver a car, and then someone's going to have the ability to use it in different ways. It's not that they couldn't take it to the track, because again, they can push a couple of buttons and it will firm up, and it'll be good for, high speed track stuff. That's flat. But I mean, most people, I feel like, with those types of cars, are enjoying them on the street and occasional DE still, Um,
Yep.
but
I like that style.
it's like, yeah, yeah. I think that, like, those cars too, they're like, they're verging on, driving a house at the track, which is not everyone's cup of
Yes,
tea.
they're getting pretty pricey for
They're
sure.
getting pretty
Yeah.
pricey, sadly. Yeah, that's sort of I mean, I get why it happened, and it's a little bit of a bummer because, you start to think, oh, well, it could be a deer at this time, or, I don't know if I feel up to, stuff
So
like
so so a
that. Yeah,
deer happened to me 2 or 3 years ago now. I was
yeah,
just I was mountain. We had just done the drive. We were going towards Atlanta, chilling, maybe 55 miles an hour, midday, two
oh,
o'clock in the afternoon. Not
oh,
not chilling there.
yeah,
I'm not expecting a deer. There's five of us, and I lead,
yeah,
which I don't normally do, but I was leading this
yeah.
time, chilling. And then I don't see a deer, but the deer is trying to race me, and
Oh no.
he went this way and
Yeah.
then this way.
Uh,
But um, luckily I'm pretty low, and I guess that might have helped with angle of trajectory. Deer
yeah.
launched like 20, 30 feet in the
Oh,
air.
hopefully you made it,
It's
poor dear. Because you can
well,
repair that. You can repair the car, but
yeah.
not cheaply. But yeah, yeah,
It wasn't as bad as I thought. It like cracked the front bumper. Didn't really do much damage. I drove it all the way to PC, rode
yeah,
Atlanta for the race, back home.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, it wasn't
yeah,
cheap to
those
repair at all.
bumpers,
But
those bumpers are what, like 10, 12 grand now. without
they indeed
overclock.
are. Yeah.
If
If
you
you can find them,
also
and
you
then
can put a
yeah.
rush on those as well, but you won't
Mhm.
actually get a time frame of when they when they can be delivered, right?
It was
I
pretty
think
quick. I think mine was a couple months. Yeah, same.
okay.
Yeah, I had to call in a favor and was like, hey, can we
Yeah.
move this?
Well, so
Thanks.
some of those bumpers though, they're not available. Like I think I'm trying to remember, but I think it's like the 997 GT2 ones, for example. Like someone asked me, but I don't think you can get those anymore.
Then you have to
So
have the car and verify the VIN and do all that stuff before they'll
yeah,
sell you
but
a
even
bumper.
that, it's like there are certain parts now. I
Yeah.
mean, engine costings and things like. I mean, I've waited 18 months for. I mean, just
I'm surprised Classic doesn't support that. And I mean, at this point,
yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know where. I
they're
don't
not
know
going to have
where
enough
that is.
demand for it though. So
Yeah,
I know there's a certain demand quotient that they have before they start
yeah,
making a part.
yeah.
But there's some things like my dad needed something. I can't remember what it was. Some random hose or line you can't
Mhm.
find anywhere. They still have the parts. It's just you have to talk to the right person that talks to the right warehouse to to get it eventually, and not
Yeah,
worry about a timeline. But yeah, 18 months. That's
yeah,
crazy.
and then if you try to buy anything on eBay, of course, you
It's
know,
fake.
you get hit with wonderful tariffs as
Oh,
well.
there's that. Yeah,
But
there's that
yeah,
wonderful joy happening.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. So yeah, it's definitely the whole pricing thing is. I mean, yeah, I understand why they are perceived as valuable as they are. I mean, obviously, like I could ask you why Metzger, right? But
I mean, I had my C2
yeah,
for 997 for a long time, and
mm,
I had other friends with the Mezger cars, and I knew about them. I wasn't super deep into it, but my main thing was just I wasn't able to keep up, no matter like suspension and things like that. And
mhm.
the hard as I drove, I was like, I can't. They just can't be driving any harder than I'm driving now, and safely keep up. And
Yeah,
then so I got into a couple of GT cars. I'm like, this feels
yeah,
totally different. And I have the ability, just the, like you said, the kinetic and the field thing
yeah,
to come into a corner and have the confidence and
yeah,
come out of it. And then just obviously, probably the number one thing is sound. That's just the
yeah.
auditory.
That goes through you. Yeah,
That note is just
yeah. We
something
are.
else. And the moment that you get to control that note all the way out, rev it all the way out
Yeah,
is the moment that I mean, I definitely got hooked on it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if it
It's
hadn't
almost
have
like
been,
remember those video games, where they
mhm,
added the driving games, where I think it was in the late '90s. I think it was Microsoft that came out with it, but the hardware. But remember, it was called force feedback.
yep.
And you'd have these steering wheels that would, you know, you'd be driving and well, you'd be whatever, video gaming, driving with glass walls around you, but it would give you feedback in the steering wheel, going
Mhm.
over bumps or whatever, right? Or so it's almost like the Metzger is like another layer of that, versus like
It
a
is.
Carrera or something, right? So
Do you,
it's got like force feedback everywhere, in
oh, for
sound, in
sure.
steering,
That's
and
true.
in suspension. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a thing.
In
Because even with the semi-solid bushings, if you haven't changed them out yet, there's still
Mhm.
vibration everywhere, and that's
Yeah.
true. I mean, I guess
Mhm.
you can't get away from not having something in motion in that car while it's on.
Yeah, yeah, it's an it is, it's such a, raw physical, um, yeah, connection or whatever experience, like roller coaster ride, I don't know, I there's going fast and then there's the feelings that you get when you're going fast, so,
Well, it's
getting
like
those 2.
I was thinking about this when you said Nürburgring, and because I lived in Germany for a bit, but it
Mhm.
reminds me, it's kind of like a grown-up GTI, where you can extract every bit of the car, and you can do it in a safe environment. I mean, majority of the time, I mean, you can go
Yeah,
over the speed limit for
yeah,
sure, but
yeah,
there's just more of it that's allowed to you feel versus
yeah.
some of the different things you can get now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as far as on the price side, it's that people also realize that there were so few of those made compared to nowadays, right?
Yep,
And they're that obviously drove the price, but the experience is not. I think it's the experience that you can't get in anything else, really. I mean, I've driven you know, whatever Ferrari, you name it, I've driven. I mean, not F50, F40, but I've driven everything else pretty much. And, you know, I could say like one of the cool ones I drove was you know, I spent a lot of time and it was a Challenge Stradale, right? Back in
Oh,
those,
nice.
it was slower than shit. I mean, it was slower than my Evo 8 that I had at the time, you
Mm,
know. It was probably not much faster than my NSX, which also wasn't fast. But you know, the delivery was fun, except that it was basically automatic, right? Had flappy paddles.
mm,
But there's very few cars that, you know, do that. And so that's why, you know, I've had multiples of all the iterations of GT3s and RSs, Metzgers, I mean. And you know, I unless something happens where suddenly they release a 911 with a race car engine, I probably won't be changing anytime soon. So, you know,
who
that's
knows what they could come up with? I mean, they could always do it like a retro build or something. I mean, classic for the,
yeah.
I know the classics, from what I heard, there's a bunch of 4 liters that are being restored. There's a
Mhm.
list.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool to see that that's happening. But hopefully, since they get restored, they'll be driven. But who knows? I think, like as you
Yeah.
said, that the price going up and the closer it is getting to the $1 million mark, if it's not I know it's over that for BTS like 4.0s and stuff like that. I've heard
Yeah.
trades and dealings
Yeah.
in the Middle East. Things have
Yeah.
moved.
And
But
I think a
just
dot
try.
two
Hopefully they get driven.
GT3 is a dot two GT3 non RS before they, I
Yeah.
mean, they're already approaching 300, right? For a decent one. But those were the bargain of the last few years, you know, and the best one to kind of get
Mm,
into, I think, especially for people that are used to the newer cars. I felt like in that car, the chassis was a little closer to the newer ones. The interior
tech
wasn't
and
like,
stuff. Yeah. Like they
yeah,
kind
the
of like it's
interior
just that
wasn't
first
like
that we're like you
30
can
years
see like
old.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's some 991 potentially, you know. You can see
Yeah.
the future where that design it just kind of moved
Yeah.
on. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I
No,
mean, I don't want to take up any more of your time,
no,
Alex.
you bet.
I think we talked about like everything I want to know
Yeah.
and more. So
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'm glad we got more Metzger centric Metzger, you know, lovers on the other side.
oh,
So
there's I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
more than I could ever imagine starting this. I was like, cool, I like Metzgers. Let's start something, and then
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
all over.
yeah, yeah. No, keep it going, man. Keep it going. Keep the, you know, keep sharing the driving experience. Like anytime you get anyone with a 991 or 992, you know, have them
Yeah,
try to
come
switch
over
with them.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
come up
exactly.
here and try this and see what they say, you know?
Yeah,
And likewise, you know, you can go drive those as well. And then you can sort of see, yeah, okay, those are impressive. And you know, they're a different thing, but you'll appreciate your own car even more, I think. So
like I have carbon buckets, and those things
yeah,
are so comfortable.
yeah, they're the most comfortable seat. And they're also something that, I think helps with the experience in terms of the feel, you know, versus what we call the sofa seats or couch seats, you know?
Do
So,
you know if because we were having this debate. I had this debate in person at at a pull off. A friend of mine's got also has carbon buckets, but I think the Euro version and the version they got released here are two different seats. Like they sit like mine's seen the Euro, maybe they're GT2 or GT2 RSs.
yeah.
They sit deeper, and I don't
Yeah.
know if that's
So,
true or not, but it feels like they sit deeper.
yeah. So they've had so many different iterations. So I know, so that car there, that's from
Mm,
Europe, it also has the Nomex covered ones. So
yeah,
those are like unobtainium. But
yeah,
for quite a number of years in Europe, they had the 991s available in the what we call 997 GT2 bucket seats. So you could get those, right? So there are 991 style 997 GT2 buckets that people were importing and buying because that's what you could get, you know, during
yeah,
I think right into the COVID era
yeah,
before it stopped. So I think those are the 991 versions, and they do sit and they do have a different angle. You're right.
yeah,
So I think that's what's happening. So if you actually have 997 ones from, you know,
yeah,
a 2008 GT2 or, you know, a 2010 or 2011 GT3, GT3 RS, if you compare them to, like I said, those, you know, the ones that there were an option in Europe or not just Europe, but rest of the world,
yeah.
those 991 style ones are different. Um, And I remember the GT3 ones and GT2 ones always had the Alcantara inserts,
Mm.
and the 991s didn't. And then also, I think there was a 997.2 launch car. It was a C4S that came with the buckets too, and then you could option it that way. Some GTSs did.
Yeah, I've got
But those,
the full leather and the heat,
yeah,
the heated
yeah, the heat.
option.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The heat. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, no. So are the ones in yours 991 or 997?
They should be 997s from what I hear. I didn't order
It's
them. I
just
got
your
them this
buddy
way.
has these other ones that
Yeah.
sit different. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay. Got
sit.
it.
So it's you feel it in the like your lower back
Yeah.
where you sit kind of like you just sit,
Angle.
and then mine you kind of sit further in.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it. And then
Yeah.
he was just going back and forth. He's like, no, they're the same seats. It's like, I'm like, no, they're not. I can
You know,
just by feel, you can, because he had
nice.
some carbon buckets in his 996 turbo. It's
Okay.
Tom. You've had to see Tom's car, the 700 some thousand mile 996 turbo. He was
Oh
going
yeah,
back
yeah.
and
Very cool.
he was going back and forth trying to figure out like what was different because he's an engineer by
Yeah.
trade. And he was like, well, it's just sitting different this angle. I'm like, no, it's two different seats.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah, I got a funny secret story, I guess. I'll give you, speaking of seats, and
Sure.
just so you know how crazy Andreas Perdiger is. It's like one of the first things when he got in my car, that blue one,
Mhm.
not too long ago, I had, there's a company called P1 Designs that has those seat cushions.
Yeah.
He got into the car, and the first thing he closed the door, and he's like, "Oh, the 997, window switch right in the right place on like the 991." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "The seat is 3 millimeters higher. What's the problem here?" And I was like, "Oh, it's these aftermarket seat cushions from this company, so I can have the tartan whatever." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, and nobody rides with me, so they haven't been broken in yet." And he's like, "Interesting." So, so you're not the only one to notice.
Wow.
Yeah, he notices all that stuff too. So yeah,
That's crazy. That's
yeah,
cool. Another fun fact. That's cool.
yeah. I mean, he's probably going to have to get some of those. I know companies make those adapters, don't they, for the front or back of the rails? So
Yeah, where it just raises it up a little bit.
yeah, you might have to do that. Or you might have to get some of those cushions.
Yeah, that too. I might have my inserts redone too, so I'll make it their way.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, very cool, man. Well, it's good to meet you. Keep on doing that,
Yeah.
and keep spreading the Mezger word.
Thanks. I will.
And
I'll send people your way.
hopefully everyone doesn't think we're too grumpy because we're stuck in the Mezger. So.
I think everybody's in the same world now these days. So
Yeah. We like what we like, so that's just how it goes. Well, cool, man. All right. Well, yeah. Let me know if you need anything or whatever.
Will do.
Cool,
Thanks,
man.
Alex.
Hey, thanks, dude. All right.
See ya.
Okay. You take care.